We need more people that are going to stand up for the truth. And, we need to stop kowtowing to the trends of the day and going here and going there, being tossed to and fro every day about what we believe. People need to have convictions.
Just because someone looks like you, to assume that they're going to better represent you based off appearance and not ideas, I think it's just very primitive thinking.
Midnight Ride. Episode 11. Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. Discussing topics like Antifa, Black Lives Matter organization, banning of Confederate flags and other free speech, police brutality, and much, much more.
All right, nation, how we doing today? This is Zeb the Magnificent and the one and only Tony. We have a very up-to-date podcast with all the wild stuff that's going on in the world. Going to cover a wide range of issues. Tony, what's on your mind today?
Well, the first thing I want to kind of touch on and talk about is this the media and corporate kind of amplification of the Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement is a organization, a group, an idea, a movement that no American should get behind. These are radical communists, people that are behind this group. And in America, we are not a communist nation. Okay, these people, if they want to be communists, they can go to some of the South American country, or they can go to some of these African countries and go fulfill their communist, paradise there.
Yeah.
But we celebrate freedom here. And the Black Lives Matter movement, along with Antifa, these groups are radical groups that are predominantly, from what I see, led by white people, especially Antifa, white liberals. And these, the values that they have no sense of values, no sense of morality other than destruction and evilness. And so I'm very concerned that corporations like Walmart and Amazon and Target and several others have decided to go about endorsing these groups. And I'm even more concerned that certain cities and government organizations have decided to endorse these groups. I mean, we've never seen this at any point in time period in U.S. history from our lifetimes. And I mean, we think about the founding fathers and what they would think, if they were to wake up,
Rise from your grave,
or take a glimpse,
Rise from the grave,
yeah, or whatever, what they would think. And I'm very concerned about the media's push for these radical groups.
For sure, and it's just not fair that they're able to brand themselves with these names. So Black Lives Matter as a concept, okay, it emotionally connects with a lot of people because, lives do matter. White lives matter, Black lives matter, brown lives matter, orange lives matter. Whenever people say Trump's an orange man, they should remember that, right? But that's true. But this organization, which in my personal opinion has a lot of communist intentions and has a lot of, we could say, backdoor connections, they stand for things outside of that concept. Same thing with Antifa. They say they're anti-fascist. Okay, no one wants a fascist government. But, I've been doing some research on Antifa, and what I'm finding out is their manifesto comes straight from communist thinkers. Like during the rise of Hitler, one reason he was so successful is because he had the juxtaposition, the counteraction against the communist Russia movement that was taking place. And so, it's like people are so afraid of things like communism, and rightfully so, but you have major mainstream media sellouts like, we got Don Lemonhead, and what's a good one for Cuomo? No Go Cuomo?
Yeah,
we'll go with that for today. I'll see if I can come up with one better. But these guys, they not only defend Antifa, but they glorify Antifa. I'll see if I can find the clip later where Chris Cuomo is basically saying that, oh, if you have a major corrupt political authority doing awful things, and then you have Antifa, and though they respond with aggression and corruption on their end, they're not as bad as the political authority themselves.
Chris Cuomo says
Antifa or whomever, anarchist or malcontent or misguided, they are also wrong to hit. But fighting hate is right. And in a clash between hate and those who oppose it are on the side of right.
Which is basically his way of saying that Antifa should get a free pass just because they don't like Trump. So definitely those are major issues, and it's just not fair that society and mainstream media personalities will attack anyone who criticizes the Black Lives Matter organization and label them as racist. I mean, that is armor that organization does not deserve.
Exactly. And we need to put this into perspective. Okay. It seems to me that a lot of the Black Lives Matter supporters, Black lives do not actually matter to them.
In the grand scheme.
In the grand scheme. I mean, look at these cities that these Democrat politicians and black politicians, they hold every office from the top down. Baltimore, Cleveland, Chicago, I mean, all these places. And there's so much crime. There's so much drug abuse. There's so much broken homes. I mean, to put this into perspective, in the 1960s, about 20% of African American homes were led by single mothers. And now that number has catapulted up to above 75%. Black people today are 13% of the population here in the United States. But according to the FBI, they account for about 50% of the murders and about 38% of all the violent crimes overall. So Black Lives Matter, the group, we need to think about how black culture is, how can they improve black culture? How can they improve the morality of the black people in their own communities before they start going out and external rioting and causing strife and division amongst the American people? This is not acceptable. And black people, we need to disown this group. Black people should not be behind this. Celebrities, you need to think about this, just from a practical standpoint. Anytime there's a herd mentality, the herd is going to be wrong. Okay?
Led by emotions.
Yeah, it's led by emotions, right? The herd is always wrong. Okay, you look throughout history, it's for the most part, it's always been that way. And so when we see celebrities, we see CNN, even Fox News, MSNBC, and then your major corporations, we've even seen some governments and school districts get on this. So really look into Black Lives Matter, who funds them, what are their beliefs, and should you be standing and supporting these groups?
Well, here's something to think about too, Tony. It's like there are really two types of reforms. There are the reforms that we think we're seeing, and then there are the reforms that are going on behind closed doors. And, to me, you got two major concerns going on right now. You got the puppeteers, we can call them, the Black Lives Matter, corporate fat cats, and the Antifa, whatever you want to call them, the top dogs that are orchestrating these protests. You hear time and time again that some of the major instigators in these riots, we should call them. There's a difference between a riot and a protest. A protest is allegedly peaceful. A riot is chaotic. But many of these orchestrators are from outside the states where the violence is ensuing. And so we're concerned about that. But another concern many people may be overlooking is what's going to go on inside these police departments. Whether the public knows about them or not, they may change a couple things on the surface. Maybe they'll add their, affirmative action percentage to where they have a higher percentage minority just to make things look more inclusive. But there'll be police chiefs that are playing footage of these riots, and they're saying that we'll be damned if this ever happens again. And we may not see these reforms take place immediately, but I could foresee a future where, even though now they're talking about replacing guns with like some kind of pellet launcher. Did you hear about that? They may take that same pellet launcher and then inject it with acid. And it's going to be more dangerous than the gun. So it's just one of those things where I really feel like any kind of major reforms that take place very quickly, though it may seem as if it's going in a more peaceful direction, they'll find a way to make it more dangerous.
Yeah, and so really be kind of investigate on your own, question these sources, and we need to think of some better solutions. I mean, there is a better way. It's got to be a better way, yeah. I think that people on the right, people on the left, people in the middle, people outside the spectrum all agree that there has to be a better way to go about policing. Okay, we all agree that police brutality is an issue. We all agree, for the most part, that the George Floyd death, just like David Dorn's death and many others that have been failed victim to police brutality that got no media coverage, that these are all bad things. And so we can work together as a society, as a country, to come up with better solutions to make sure that these things don't happen again. But when we start to grasp on to different groups and we start to say, I'm of Black Lives Matter, I'm of all lives matter, I'm of this, I'm of that, I'm in this group and that group, then we start to segregate ourselves, and then the issue gets lost in the commotion, in the segregation, in the division.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's a shame that as a white man, I'm afraid to say openly that all lives matter. And it shouldn't be that way, because every life should matter. And I'm not talking about, people always assume that if you say if someone says all lives matter, people assume that they're like pro-police, that they're bleeding blue, so on and so forth. But I don't see why we can't be more specific and look at every single incident where someone had their life taken from them by law enforcement for an unjust reason, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, what have you. But to me, it's just such a fundamental aspect of human nature that all lives matter, and then people get caught up only acknowledging someone's death if it fits a certain political narrative at a certain time.
Okay, so I encourage all of you to go and look at this case about Tony Timpa. And Tony Timpa is a white man, and almost the exact same thing happened, if not worse, with Tony Timpa, and there was no media coverage of it. So I encourage all of you to go to look at that story. All right.
Sure. One issue that I wanted to bring up with Tony today was the banning of the Confederate flag from NASCAR stadiums, and it's something that's happened very recently. There's already backlash, considering many people that follow NASCAR tend to have like Southern heritage and kind of Southern affiliation. But from a political and kind of business perspective, I think it's a pretty hot topic. I would go so far as to say that businesses should be allowed to tell people what they can wear and not wear, as long as this preference is enforced universally, if it is referring to workers within the business. But if it's customers, because NASCAR is nothing without its fans, I think we're entering a slippery slope, going down a slippery slope when you say that NASCAR, which is basically in the public arena, is starting to step on people's free speech liberties, like expression. And at the end of the day, the Confederate flag, it's going to mean what it's going to mean to people, but it's not something that is inherently physically dangerous. Some people may be offended ideologically for it, and that's a shame that people have those kinds of feelings. But no one's going to take a Confederate flag, at least in modern civilized society, if it's in some like hole in the wall somewhere. Maybe this could happen, unfortunately, but no one's going to strangle someone with a Confederate flag. There's nothing inherently physically dangerous about it. So I think NASCAR banning it, really does kind of come down to perhaps trying to lure in more fans, trying to, fit the current, political, social commentary tide that our society is dealing with right now. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I kind of have maybe a slight disagreement with you here. So I think that NASCAR should be allowed to tell their employers what they can and can't wear. And I think that NASCAR should be allowed to tell customers who go into their parks to buy their tickets what they can and can't wear. Now, where I disagree on, or where I agree with you on, is NASCAR using this as an opportunity to kowtow to the current trends of the day and to get in with the liberal, the nuance, the more right, what they call the right side of history kind of thing. I do think that is a wrong decision by NASCAR, because these people that are demanding that you get rid of the Confederate flag, these are not NASCAR fans. You're not going to go and get Black Lives Matter to start attending NASCAR rallies because you ban Confederate flags. Now, what I do think is that the attendees, the NASCAR fans, need to step up. They need to rise up and boycott NASCAR to send a message to these companies that we are not going to take this liberal mindset about everything. And I think that if those NASCAR fans, if the NASCAR drivers decide not to show up, decide not to support, then it will send a clear message to all other sports leagues and even other companies that this is not the way that this should be handled. And I think that conservatives so many times have lost their ability to effectively organize like the liberals. The liberals, they're great. They scream, they yell, and they make a lot of noise. And these people, these corporations, these businesses, they give in. Conservatives, they tend to just, crawl back into their holes. They'll say something maybe on Facebook every now and then, but they'll crawl back into their holes and they'll continue to support these companies. And you reward bad behavior when you do this. You create a moral hazard when you do this. So NASCAR fans, definitely, if NASCAR is going to tell you that you cannot wear or support the Confederate flag, and me as a black man, I support the Confederate heritage, the flag itself. I don't have any problem with it, and I think that it tells a lot about a person's their own ability to comprehend and see nuanced views about things when they say that anything that is Confederate flag, anything that's a Confederate monument. This week in Virginia, they there's news about them trying to tear down the Robert E. Lee statue. And I think that all of these are bad ideas, and conservatives need to step up. They need to boycott these things, and need to get more organized and stop rewarding bad behavior.
So here's something to think about. So I need to look up and add his name, but the only black NASCAR driver that I know of that's being spoken of has Black Lives Matter painted onto his car. Can you just imagine if one of those NASCAR drivers had the Confederate flag plastered to their car? Do you think NASCAR would be okay with that second person?
Well, I think that NASCAR they would accept the Black Lives Matter, but they wouldn't accept the Confederate flag. And to me, I think that even from my perspective, I have no problem with somebody having a Black Lives Matter shirt on. They want to have a website. They want to have a Black Lives Matter car that's all blacked out. Go for it. But don't try to take away someone else's right or try to encourage or support someone else's freedoms to be taken away in the course of that.
There's something funny to consider, and then I'm going to move on to the statues. Is if there was a black person in the stands waving the Confederate flag, do you think NASCAR would actually enforce the rule? Do you think they would actually have the cojones to go over there and try to detain that flag?
I think that NASCAR probably would not, because it would create a lot of bad media for them.
Yeah, sure.
They would have to explain a lot. If it was a white person, they definitely would, because it would probably create a lot of good PR for them. So
yeah, and so and it's getting into those things as well, because from a small business perspective, yes. there's definitely a part of me that understands that companies should be able to regulate what goes on because they are the ones putting on the service. But then when we start getting into those things where we're kind of taking different scenarios and actually seeing that some groups and some ideologies are favored over others, that's kind of when my red flag, no pun intended, starts to raise. And when I say red flag, I mean in terms of red flag. I'm not a in the closet Confederate Southern antebellum racist here, right? Tony wouldn't be hanging out with me if I was. All right, our next our next topic I want to get into are these Confederate statues, and also I'll throw the forts. Have you been following that?
Yeah, yeah.
Changing the forts from Confederate generals, and my basic response kind of comes down to the community. I think if a community votes for it, then they can take those things down. That being said, if you have people, crazy rioters that are destroying it. There was one statue, I'm sure it was some Confederate, maybe it was Robert E. Lee, who knows. And there were rioters just basically like hanging from the arms of the statue and just like, climbing up it like it's some kind of tree. Did you see that one?
No, but I have seen photos where the monuments have been desecrated.
Yeah.
People have spray painted things. Have roped off their heads of the statues, and I think all these people should be charged. They should go to jail. Under normal conditions, this is what would happen.
Yeah, and it gets me because these are things that are, I don't know if they would be considered infrastructure.
Yeah, they are. They are public infrastructure,
and they're things that are supported by tax dollars by the community, and like the damage that takes place and the repair that's needed is going to be on the taxpayers. And again, the really nasty part is this is many times instigated by people outside of the community who get to basically what would the phrase be, hit it and quit it. Like they get to basically, it's like a dog marking its territory. They get to take a fat shit on someone else's community and they walk away, and there's no accountability for these outside instigators. And to me, it's like, it's going to take construction. It's going to take an organized effort to get rid of these statues, and that's going to take taxpayer money. I mean, some of those bulldozers are just ridiculously expensive, and that could hit taxpayers in different ways. So my major stance, my broad stroke stance at the end of the day is it should be local governments and municipal counties getting to vote whether or not these things get removed or not.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you there. I think that my more so agreement comes from a philosophical standpoint, meaning why would we want to get rid of these monuments? I mean, because it hurts someone's feelings. I mean, don't tell me that it's a symbol of slavery, because I can go by and walk them and observe them and feel just fine, and I'm a black man. So if I can do it, why can't white people do it? Why can't other black people do it? That just tells me that there's something wrong. That there's something not necessarily wrong, but there's something off about their ability to be able to critically think and to not take everything offensive, right? These are things that are a part of the country's history, whether you like it or not. And when you remove these things and you just remove all elements of something from a culture, from a society, you essentially that's modern day book burning.
It is.
I mean, essentially that's what you want to do, and that's what all these dictators have done throughout history. They get rid of and they remove things that are antithetical to their beliefs and their viewpoints. And this is exactly why I think that the Black Lives Matter movement, they're a radical group, and I'm almost to the extent that they need to be considered domestic terrorists, and that we need to start looking into who is funding these groups, why are they funding them. And I've even seen photos to where Antifa or Black Lives Matter, to me, they're both kind of the same thing. But Antifa is paying black people to go and destroy their own communities and go and steal things in their own communities. I've seen videos of this online. And I think that this is, the President Trump, he needs to take a stand on this and not try to kowtow to these people. To get Jared Kushner And his daughter, Ivanka Trump, stopped listening to them on every single thing. They're obviously liberals, and he needs to take a stand on this and be strong on this because people elected him to be the law and order president. Okay, we wanted stability back. We saw all the scandals in the Obama administration. We saw the corruption of the Hillary almost getting in. People elected Trump, at least the conservatives, elected Trump to be law and order. Now, me personally, I didn't vote for him, but that's my perspective on why I think conservatives would have voted for him.
We could also include the nation building of the Bush dynasty.
Yes,
we could throw that in there as well. Here's a specific example. My friends who work in education have told me that there have been many books, speaking of book burning, like Huck Finn, that have been banned. And I remember reading Huck Finn as a young white boy. It sounds funny, young white boy. As a young white boy back in the day, it does use the N-word in a very culturally honest way of the time. But the whole story leads up to a scene where Huck Finn takes the slave that the family had, that the family often belittled and took advantage of. And Huck Finn realizes that this slave is a human just like him. And as a white boy, it really opened my eyes to people of different races coming together. And you needed to see just how nasty and raw and brutal things were between different races back then to come to that lesson. Okay, but that's a lesson that kids won't ever have anymore because people are too offended by the usage of a word that is not often used in society very much anymore to begin with. Maybe within certain social circles, but even then, it's usually used within certain communities very liberally and not seriously. You see my point?
Yeah, I do.
So yeah, Huck Finn's a good book. It's probably going to be on the banned book list. If Joe Biden becomes president, there'll be a big old Huck Finn book burning, on his first day in office. So we can look forward to that. What are some other major events, Tony, that come to your mind?
Well, I want to talk about the Democrats this week and the nonsense that I saw on the television and on the internet this week. Democrats decided to create a public spectacle in the Capitol, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all the Democrats leaders decided to wear Kunta Kinte apparel, black apparel, like African apparel around their necks and stuff, and take a moment of silence for black people. Now, I think that this as a black person, it doesn't offend me, but I just find it so odd how black people do not see through this. What do you call it?
Pandering?
Pandering, yes. How they don't see through this pandering. Because it's obvious that the Democrats don't care about black people.
And you ain't black.
It's obvious. I mean, the Democrats have elected a white man who's basically a segregationist, who, signed the crime bill, who touches little children and does other, questionable things.
They touch his hairs in the pool. I have to correct you there, yeah.
And he does other, kind of questionable things. And he's even gone to the point to say that, if you vote for Trump, then you're not black. I mean, this is the person that they have elected to represent the Democratic Party. How does Nancy Pelosi? How often do you think that she cares about black people? She lives in California, and she probably owns tens of millions of dollars worth of money in her house.
Worth of ice cream.
Yeah, and everything is gated around, and everything around her is pretty much the ghetto.
Yeah.
So all these politicians, they come from these Democratic areas, and these communities that they represent are all garbage. I tell you, the biggest offender in Texas is Sheila Jackson Lee, and over there in California, Maxine Waters, two black women that have been in Congress for too long, and they haven't done anything for black people. They continue to talk and talk and talk, and do nothing and nothing and nothing.
Is Maxine Waters the one that said we must mobilize?
Yeah, something. Yeah,
we
she
must
says a lot of
mobilize.
radical stuff. So these are the people that the Democrats have decided to put in leadership of their party.
Well, just it comes back to this idea that, like, for example, and some would say that maybe it's apples and oranges, but as a white man, I don't feel any more represented by Trump based off appearance than I would with Barack Obama based off appearance. We could get into things like policy and perspective and things like that. But why people are so inclined to look at the potential running mate of Joe Biden needing to be an African American woman and assume that they'll be better represented by that. To me, once someone is in the political elite and they've gone to these Ivy League schools, or even, maybe they came from poverty, but they've risen up into the Washington elite circles, they're not going to remember their origins, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, let's just call it what it is. It's racist. When black people say that we have to have a black woman vice president, otherwise they won't represent our views, that's racist. When black people go and vote for Obama in overwhelming numbers because he's black, that's racist.
Yeah, I'll go so far as to say it's like you look at someone like Jackie Robinson, okay? Jackie Robinson, for many people I've talked to, and Tony can tell me what he thinks about this. People remember him as being one of the first. Is he one of the first or the first professional black baseball player?
Yeah, I'm not sure. He's one of the first.
But regardless, like at the end of the day, he was a kick-ass baseball player. Like regardless of his race, and that's what's more compelling to me than anything. So, like for example, we can sit here and say that it's admirable Obama was able to overcome, the bias, due to his color that might have been there. But at the same time, just because someone looks like you, to assume that they're going to better represent you based off appearance and not ideas, I think it's just very primitive thinking.
Yes, and I mean Jackie Robinson. Most people celebrate Jackie Robinson because of what he believed and the fact that he had a standard, he had some beliefs, and he was not willing to compromise on his beliefs. Unlike Drew Brees that we talked about in the last couple of episodes. Jackie Robinson, now I don't know if he would have succumbed to the political pressure today, but he didn't at that time. And he stayed true to his values. And he was a great baseball player. That's a secondary thing to me. But, we need more people that are going to stand up for the truth. And, we need to stop kowtowing to the trends of the day and going here and going there, being tossed to and fro every day about what we believe. People need to have convictions. And mostly when I'm talking about people, I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm not talking about Antifa. We already know what they believe. The people who are going to stand up and celebrate freedom and liberty and honesty and morality, these people need to stand up for the truth, have some conviction for your values, and oppose these evil forces.
Yeah, and I think they talk about what the devil in sheep's clothing or wolf in sheep's clothing. You may have heard that before, but it's many of these things I'm seeing. As far as people getting shut down for believing something opposite of the mainstream, relics of history being torn down. I think slowly but surely, we talk about sinister forces. We're starting to see some thought policing slowly beginning to emerge. And, whether, you listen to our channel or you despise everything we say, the one constant has to be this. People should be, free and entitled to be able to think on their own. And if they are to share thoughts in a sophisticated society, you think people would be able to respectfully disagree without having a hissy fit. To me, I just feel like our country's ruled by hissy fits at this point.
Yeah, we're ruled by people that don't have a sense of morality, people that don't have a sense of law and order. And they want things, they don't really truly want to be equal. They want power. They want to be supreme. So they don't really want blacks to be equal with whites. They want black supremacy. This is what this is about. This is about black supremacy. Blacks taking over white people. There's this news story that came out this week about a California college professor that is being investigated for discrimination and is currently under police protection after refusing a request to exempt black students from final exams in the wake of George Floyd's death. Now, I don't know if you all got the chance to see one of the many funerals that were on television from George Floyd, but there were thousands of people at these funerals, hundreds of people. And I've heard so many stories, read so many stories online of people who have had relatives and elders who had passed away in the wake of the coronavirus. And they were not allowed to have more than 4 to 10 people at a funeral. So there were family members that were not allowed to properly mourn, allowed to properly, put away their loved ones that had passed away. However, we now have, a situation where the media is telling us that coronavirus is going to kill us, like it's the plague, but yet they also say that everyone can go outside and they can protest. And then out of the other side of their mouth, they're saying that businesses can't open, churches can't open, but everybody can go outside and start burning down Target and all these other places.
Yeah.
So I just find this to be very hypocritical, and we need to question the motives behind this. We need to question the motives behind this because, I've gotten to the point to where now if I hear anything on television, I assume that it's a lie.
Oh yeah.
It's just gotten that bad, and we need to think about, why have we given so much emphasis to this one incident that has occurred. Now, it was a tragic incident, but there have been many other tragic incidences that have occurred. And we did not go and tear down buildings. We did not go and, call people racist, bow down on our knees and ask for white forgiveness. We didn't do that, right? So we really need to think about and analyze these sources and information that we're hearing.
And I tell you what, they've even had health officials that have come out and said that it's okay for people to protest because even though their physical health may be at risk, the mental health of the nation needs to be preserved. Have you heard that one yet?
Yes, I have. Which is absolutely ridiculous.
And it's just, I think in that case, it's people that are just afraid of losing their job. And what's really sad, I tell you, if either Tony or I end up on the public stage, and if either one of us, or even if one of our listeners were asked about some of this crap that's going on, and if they said, or if one of you said they had no comment, just imagine, like, let's say that, I'm going to pick who's a famous person you like?
Nobody.
Let's say Mr. Nobody's getting interviewed on The View, and they say, hey, Mr. Nobody, what do you think about all these riots? And they said, I have no comment. Don't you know they would jump the guy for it?
Yeah.
You see, they want you to follow the bullet points.
They do. And the thing is, regardless of anything that you see on television now, when they bring these experts in, I've gotten to the point to where I don't even listen because all the experts that they bring on say the exact same thing. Like ABC will bring on an expert, and then, CNN will bring on some child psychologist about how to talk to your child about what's going on. And then, MSNBC will bring on a psychologist. And they'll all have the same viewpoint. They'll all have the same perspective.
Yeah, did you ever watch a show, kind of short-lived, it was on TNT, early 2000s, called 1,000 Ways to Die?
Mm.
Okay, so what they would do is they would have these ridiculous scenarios. Like there was one where there was like a nurse who was trying to operate some kind of equipment and she like electrocuted herself. But anyway, after they would have the little skit that was based off like urban legends of people dying, they would have specialists that were on there and they would supposedly be a doctor or they would be like an electrical PhD, and it was obviously just some goober dressed in a suit. Give you a better example. It's like those male enhancement commercials where they may have like a guy and, you can tell he's just wearing a white uniform and maybe, he's like balding or maybe he's wearing glasses. They're trying to make him look sophisticated and you just know that it's hogwash. But they just have a guy pretending to be a doctor trying to validate what you know to be false. Does that image kind of resonate with you?
No, I've never looked at these male enhancement commercials, but yeah, I understand your point.
Some people don't have my problems. So if you consider all these things, my friends, it really makes you wonder, are there puppeteers out there that are pulling your strings? Is thought policing taking place? And oftentimes it goes unnoticed. And do the people on the media and all the major academics and the celebrities have some kind of hidden agenda or benefit to trying to make you think a certain way? So we're about to close this episode out, and I'll let Tony have the last word.
Yeah, so be observant, be vigilant, kind of have a sound mind about things, and always question what you hear on the news. We want to thank you for listening to this episode. We've noticed an uptick in viewers, so we are.
I think we're up to what is it, 200 now?
Yeah,
200 views.
So we're excited about that, and so we look forward to coming back with you guys next week.
And out of those 200 views, none of them are snowflakes, and that's what makes us the most happy. Peace out.